Hi guys, welcome back to Hot Girl Evolving. Today I'm here with Anya.
Oh my god.
Yeah! She was on time and ready to go.
That is unheard of.
You were 2 minutes late. That's
2 minutes, that's basically early.
Yeah, you were early. I was really proud of you. I had a feeling too. I feel like you've been really good with your time. You're like, you've never been late, ever. Like, I've only heard it from Maze.
That's weird. Oh, did she tell you how
No,
late
you
I
were
am?
just, like, you guys would giggle about it, be like, oh, like, you're like, on time today. But I'm like, I don't think Anya has ever been late with me, ever.
That's pretty crazy. That's not intentional, I'm sorry.
I love it.
I don't know why. I think I don't know. I got up and I was like, I know what I'm going to wear today. And I know that I'm going to get a matcha first. I timed it out.
Wait, where did you get a matcha from?
From my coffee place, Morris.
I feel like I have a problem. I literally, like, I get so anxious. Like, I'll get places, like, 30 minutes before. Like, I'm always the person.
I know you're always early.
I don't know
Like,
why,
at the
because I
fucking
feel...
castings, I was like, how dare you be walking out and I'm about to line up?
But then I got in and out in 2 seconds. And I got to go, like,
it's smart.
I know.
I tried. I was like, I said to you the day before, I'm going to get there early. And you're like... Here you are, I'm leaving.
And you're literally arriving. Okay, now for this topic today, girls. So I remember we met up, we had our movie date, and we were talking about something. We were going into greens.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh my God, I want to have this conversation on my podcast just about like women being objects. And I was like, I guess I could do it by myself. And then like you said something and I was like, okay, she's the perfect person to have this conversation with, because we were like, we were having a day where we both were like, oh my God, the men today were just crazy, like on the street when we were walking around.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah. And I kind of have just been like going back and figuring out, because it actually makes me like so angry when that happens to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like I guess it should be like, because I feel like people justify it when they're like, oh, but they're complimenting you, or that's how men justify it. They're like, oh, but it's just compliments, or we're telling you to have a good day, or telling you to smile. But like, I feel like it's gotten to a point now where like it happens to me and I just literally get so angry. So I've been trying to figure out, okay, like what about it is like making me so mad? And this is when I kind of like told you like what we were going to talk about, how like I feel like because I've been modeling for so long, like it almost feels like a huge part of my identity is just like the way that we look, basically, because that's like how we're validated. So because I've kind of grown up in this industry, I'm like, okay, I guess I'm only ever going to be validated for the way that I look. And then like almost those experiences, like walking in the street being like yelled at for your appearance, kind of makes you feel like, okay, yeah, like I think men in general just like literally see a woman and just see sex.
Yes.
They don't see like anything else. So that's kind of where I got to when I was thinking about this.
Yeah, I think that like I remember saying to you, it's because men feel so entitled. Like men have this sense of entitlement that I don't know, I know where it comes from. It's because they always have felt like that, and that's how patriarchy works.
Right.
I mean, patriarchy, no, this is a
No, I want you to go in, because this is what you went to school for, so you need to tell the girls.
But like when I was doing gender studies, I was reading one of my assigned readings, and it was about the analysis of like how patriarchy started, and it basically started with the agricultural revolution.
Okay.
So at the time before the agricultural revolution, which was like 11,000. I mean, actually, don't even quote me on that. 1,100 years ago. But before the agricultural revolution, there was a hunter-gathering society set up. So the men would go out and hunt and the women would gather.
Right.
And even though there was like a gender disparity between the genders, there was different roles that men and women did, it was pretty much equal, because men had a job and women had a job, and they both involved a lot of work, and they would come home and they would provide for their family, which was usually just like one child. So there was a gender disparity, but it wasn't as different as it is today. And then when agriculture was introduced, men were able to produce more crops. People were able to produce more crops. So the men would go out and make more, I don't know, do the work.
Yeah.
And the women, because of that, because they were able to do more work in a shorter amount of time, because they had the tools, because agricultural revolution provided all these tools for them to use, they were able to have more babies because they were able to grow their family, right? So then the men ended up going out more and working more, and because birth rates increased, women were at home more.
At home, like.
So that is just honestly an accidental thing that happened.
Okay.
It just happened like that because obviously men can't have babies and stay home and look after them. So society that's just
how it ended up.
The gender the gender separation happened like that. And then another thing that happened from that was that because birth rates increased and all the men were doing all the work now and the women were at home, the men wanted to determine and secure the paternity of their children. So they wanted to make sure that the work that they were doing would go to like their family, their son and their grandsons and whatever. So then they basically started seeking agency over women's bodies because they didn't want women to go and have sex with all these other men.
Right.
So that maybe all of his work would go to a child that's not his. So that's where men seeking agency over women's bodies started.
Yeah.
And that was so fucking long ago.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And men still behave like that today.
But now I feel like it's just snowballed into something.
Exactly. But like you can still see that. It's like it is at its core the entitlement and the need to seek agency over women's bodies. Like the fact that a man will look at a woman in the street and think that he is able to comment on that woman's body and her appearance and actually verbalize that to her. It's the same notion. It's the same concept as a man needing to seek control a woman's body fucking hundreds of years ago. Like
That's
it comes from that.
Feels.
Yeah, it literally comes from that. And it's scary.
It is.
It's scary. And I also think that women find it so hard to comprehend because I don't know anyone who would say that to someone they don't know. Like who would ever comment on someone's appearance. Like I've never done that.
Yeah, that's why I like flip it and I'm like I would
never say that.
I also
but it's
don't,
so
like,
ingrained in their behavior because they've always been able to behave like that. They always have for years.
I don't know, it's interesting. But then I like think, okay, how can I not be so like I almost like how can I like protect myself from it or like not be so affected by it? But like we literally like sometimes we just can't even avoid it. Like I texted you the other day when I was literally just woke up. It's 7 a.m. Like the day hasn't even started. I'm on my way. There's this like crazy person in front of me like screaming. He's like C word. I can't say it because it's gonna get my video, whatever. But like just acting crazy. I'm like, oh, it's like a crazy guy, whatever. I walk to the train. Of course, he's also walking to the King's Cross station. Then I step in front of him to like go, like I pass in front of him and it's almost like him seeing me like made him more angry and triggered, and then he started like targeting me almost. And it was like, okay, it's too early for this. So then I'm literally like speed walking to get down to the train. But it's almost like I felt like he was seeing the direction I was going because he also took that same route, and I was like hiding in the train station from this man.
Yeah.
And then in those moments, it's almost like you realize like, oh my God, I am so vulnerable right here, like right now as a woman, and this crazy man is like targeting me almost.
Yeah.
And those are the situations where it's like, that's when I just get so angry because it's like I so badly just like want to like almost like just like protect myself and be like, you know what, this is like some men act this way, but I don't have to let it like rule my life. And then I'm literally
can't do that. And it's also like why like it's that you're scared.
Right.
You are actually scared of this man.
No,
who you don't
I was.
know. And then that's the question of like why are we so scared? And it's unfortunately, you can't protect yourself because women protect themselves all the time. Like you can have a woman who like plays herself like so by the book, like so safe, like doesn't go out and like she'll still be fucking abused. She will still be targeted by men. And like that's why the conversation needs to shift from like what we can do to protect ourselves to the conversation about like what men can do to stop doing this shit.
Right.
Because self-protection is a preventative measure, but what are we preventing? You know? It shouldn't be an issue in the first place.
Right. Well, yeah, because remember we were kind of talking about like the whole thing that happened in Bondi, and then I also was talking about somebody that was like laminating my eyebrows, and she talked about how there was like a stabbing in Thailand, and it was all of the victims were women. And that like reminded me how you were like, we need to start looking at these situations that happen and ask ourselves like, you know, why are women being targeted by men?
Yeah.
I don't have that answer.
Yeah, well, I think that the Bondi thing was really like has kind of woken a lot of people up to like how big of a deal this is. But I think that I was like listening to my podcast of this woman who's like really great, and she's a huge feminist, and like she was saying something about how, you know, the culture of misogyny is so ingrained in our society that we like, it's normal to us. And the fact that like when the Bondi thing first started, it was like, like it's clear that women were targeted, but there was no ideation. Like it wasn't a terrorist attack, and he wasn't following an ideation. And she was like, hang on, isn't the hatred of women an ideation? Like misogyny and like actually going out and like killing women and targeting women is an ideation, and we do need to see that as an act of terrorism, especially seeing as half the population of the fucking world is women.
Right.
Sorry.
No, you can say that.
Oh, okay. Half the population is women.
Right.
So that should be taken super seriously. And the fact that it wasn't seen as a terrorist act or this man was following an ideation is scary, because it's so normal to us. Yeah. The concept of men hating women, that we don't even see it as an issue. And I think that now, because there's been so much conversation since that, it's kind of woken people up. It's kind of woken men up a little bit. But this conversation should have been, I mean, women have been talking about this for fucking years. Yeah. And non-binary people and all the people from marginalized groups have been talking about this for years, and men are the ones who don't listen, who actually need to be involved in these conversations. And even like recently, like this week, did you see that this like boys' school, like these 3 boys have been expelled from their school because they like wrote a list of like ranking all the girls in their year from like hottest to like unrapeable. They use that word, unrapeable.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's like, this is nothing new. Like I went to like a primary school in Paddington, and all of the boys in my primary school, when we started, there was like 15, there was equal number of girls to boys, and then they all leave and they go to like these private boys schools. And I just know, like, it's kind of a known thing if you grow up in Sydney that those private boys schools are fucking breeding rapists. Right. Like they are really scary.
But I just want to know, like, where does that begin?
I think,
like, where is that first seed planted, like, that then they think, like, this is a normal way to think, like, how does that happen?
I think that it's, like, a bunch of things. I think it's, like, the way... It's so hard because it really is so ingrained, and like we talked about, from thousands of years ago. Right. Like gender discrimination and disparity between the genders has been happening for centuries. So it is somewhat like ingrained in our behavior rather than our biology. I don't think it's an issue of biology. It's our behaviors that are passed on through generations. But I also think it's like the way that your parents talk, the way that your friends talk, and the way that your teachers talk. Like if I think about when I went to primary school, even, like, I remember, like, a teacher would come up and be like, I need some really strong boys to come and help me take this to the trash. And it's like some freaking cardboard. Right. Like, a girl can carry that. She's a child, but she's a girl.
That's
and she
interesting.
Can carry it.
Or, like, you can't wear a spaghetti strap. Or, like there's always little rules against women wearing, like, you can't show your shoulders.
Yeah,
or your skirt
that's more
can't
in America, I think.
Yeah, it is.
But it's like that. And even the way, like, when you're so young, you learn everything from your environment. Right. Like, a lot of things from your environment. And if your environment has, like, those little microaggressions and your teachers just say things like that, then you kind of do, like, as a child, as a 6-year-old, you think, oh, like, boys are stronger than girls because the girls don't have to carry that. They can't do it. And, like, little things like that really impact you. And then if you are taken out of a co-ed environment and put into a school with only boys with so much testosterone, and the only way that you see women is like, I mean, the reason they separate the genders is because they don't want any distractions. Right. It's like, why do you see women as a distraction, as a luxury, as a thing, a pleasure, a thing for your pleasure, for your enjoyment? Like, that isn't
that's the biggest
normal.
One. It's like, I am not here for your pleasure.
Exactly. Or you're my mum, or I'm your mum or your teacher. Right. So that's the only way that they're, like, seeing women. And that's a problem. And then the whole, like, you know what guys are like when they're so young, and, like, there's a lot of testosterone,
Right.
and they're all like freaking out and going through puberty. Like, it's
Yeah.
just not a good environment to
Yeah.
raise boys who need to respect women. Like, they don't know how.
Right.
And also, our culture is so lenient with boys,
Yeah.
and allows them to behave like boys will be boys. Like, that is such a horrible statement, because boys will be boys honestly just means that boys will rape and boys will be disrespectful, and that's just what they're like. And that's not acceptable, because
Yeah.
women do not do that.
I was also like going back to you saying like people saying it's like biological almost. I feel like see a lot of people try and like use that as an excuse, like, oh well, men innately like aren't supposed to be like in monogamous relationships or with just one person, like, you know, they'll naturally cheat because like we need more partners. And I'm just like, it almost like seeing these things like on, I feel like social media also has changed a lot, like we are exposed to so much more. It's like I'll start to be like, oh, like maybe they're right, like maybe like just me isn't good enough for someone. Maybe men actually do need to be with multiple partners. And you see these little things and they start to plant seeds in like your head. So if I'm like this old, already kind of getting influenced by this one man talking like this, then imagine like a young boy saying that, yeah, you're right, like I should have multiple wives. And we're like, actually, like, no.
Exactly. Totally. Like, it is about your environment. And the people who are older than you and who are around you all the time, who influence and foster these perspectives and these ideas that you just end up following. And there's also something about like young people being so vulnerable. Like, I think that's why someone like Andrew Tate was so successful in gaining this like large following of like young boys. I think it's just because there's like something like very vulnerable about young boys. You know, there's like a certain insecurity, and they kind of like, I think he appeals to them because he offers them like a way to like a set of rules, a set of rules about how to treat women and what women are to you, and this is what you do and this is what you deserve. And I think that like that's how he's kind of like gotten this community. Like, I don't know, boys feel like
but
have
insecurity,
community.
I think that was like the perfect word to use, because when I had a therapy session we were just like talking about different things and how like believing that you like need multiple women, or like almost seeing women as objects, is like your own personal trauma and insecurity. Being like, if you like seriously can't be in a committed relationship with one person and like it feels better for you to have multiple people, like that's just deep insecurity and like not believing that you deserve to be loved by one person.
It's just, I don't even know where that comes from, because it's just like, I think it comes from society being set up to benefit men, and men can have whatever they want, and women have the exact opposite.
Right.
So that's just like, you want more, and I don't know what that is about, but it's ridiculous.
It is.
It's also like the lack of empathy. Like, if you are in a relationship with one person, like, I don't know, like, care about that, like, be present in that. Like, you don't need more. You don't actually want more. I think,
though, like, just because, like, I think like, social media has changed just relationship dynamics so much that, like, we don't even kind of, like, realize it. But because we're just exposed to so much and so many options, like, think about somebody who, like, didn't have a phone, like, and you were in a relationship with someone. You didn't have, like, apps to swipe on, Instagram to look at different people. Like, it was like you were just kind of focused on that one person. So now that we are like, you know, exposed to so much more and so many different ways of like getting away with things, it just makes it like, it shouldn't make it harder, but it almost like, it's kind of crazy that now like a whole new set of problems has arisen, because like, oh, now people are like, excusing the fact that they just want to be able to cheat.
Yeah. I think it's like, like dating is so accessible now.
Yeah,
like seeing people is so accessible to you.
It's a lot.
That you have to be like a special type of person who's like happy with what they have.
Yeah.
Which is scary. Like,
I know, I'm like, you
dating,
really
like people are so disposable in online dating.
Basically. I kind of want to know like your relationship to men at the moment, because I feel like everybody kind of like walks around with their own like way they view like the world and men, because I feel like right now at this point in my life I have my guard up so much. Like, any man that like talks to me, I'm like, he has bad intentions. Like, I'm so like blocked off, and it's just because of all the things that we just talked about, like really like feeling like I've been an object my whole life. Also just being in weird situations like within our job, like with photographers, and you're like, okay, you're literally using your craft to like have women get naked in front of you so you can take pictures of them for what? I don't know, because this concept is questionable. But like just all these things where I'm like, oh my God, these people are like, they just make me so angry. So I feel like it's just been so many years of that now I'm just like, every man is bad until he proves me, differently.
Yeah. I don't know. I
I'm like, everyone is horrible.
No, I'm trying to like find a way to say that without sounding so rude.
But it's hard. But that's when it's like, oh my God, I don't want to be this way.
But the thing is, it's like we don't want to feel like this. And this is the question, like, why do we feel like this? This is not our problem. It's not a me problem. It's a huge issue in society. My experiences with men and my experiences with dating men is different because I would say, I would say my experiences dating men have been interesting, but like not super, I don't know. I mean, not great. Yeah. But like interesting in the sense that I feel like guys have this thing that when they like finally, I feel like women are so open with their emotions, and when a guy connects with someone and gets to that level of like they're quite comfortable, then they just like open up and they like think you're amazing. Yeah. And then they'll like think that, I don't know, I say this to my friends, like I think they think that it's like you are so special, like you're not like other girls, like you make me feel crazy. It's like, actually we're just having a conversation about our feelings and like a deep conversation that I have with my friends like every single day. Like this is, you're just like just revolutionary for you, and this is like a normal day for me. Yeah. And that's why women are, I don't know, all of my female friends are so emotionally intelligent. Right. And most of the guys that I know, not the ones that I've like dated, like not saying that they are emotionally intelligent, but like my experiences with men, like older men, like my parents' friends or like my family members, like who are men, I just am astonished at how emotionally unintelligent they are. Right. And their inability to like see beyond a surface level concept. And I think that like, even with my dad, like I've had so many conversations about gender and like gender disparity issues, and like it's that lack of sort of analysis. They don't understand that things are happening that they can't see. And I find that really crazy. Yeah. And I find that most of my conversations with men, I'm just like, wow, you really don't get it. Like, you really don't see that, like, it's really necessary to, like, talk about this or analyze this or debunk this. Like, you just are happy living with the surface level understanding of this topic or this concept and moving on. And they don't even, like, see, and that's why it's hard for them to understand that there's all of this inequality happening, because it's not in their faces. They're not experiencing it.
Well, so to them, it's like not real then.
To them, it's like, not real.
You just don't know because you haven't lived it.
Yeah. It's all, but then it's like, why do you have to experience something to have empathy for something that's happening? Why do you have to have it shoved in your face to know that it's happening? Right. Which is another issue that I think leads me back to people being just lacking empathy. People are unable to empathize with situations that they haven't experienced, which I just don't understand. I really try to not be like that. Yeah.
Well, I think kind of like going back to what you said, like just your like girlfriends being more emotionally intelligent, because I feel like we kind of get the rep like, oh, women are more emotional, which I think is like true to a certain sense, but it should be like, why aren't men comfortable to have the same kind of conversations we are having? Like, why is it so revolutionary for like you and a man to be sharing like a vulnerable conversation, and they're like, oh my God, like I've never like it. Why are boys, you know, ranking hottest to like that list you said, instead of like sitting there with their friend talking about like normal,
in a respectful way,
like normal conversations?
I think that going back to, there's two things that I want to say. Going back to the women are more emotional, it's like, okay, are they? Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure that anger and like shouting and violence and killing and raping, those come from anger, and anger is an emotion. Right. So if we're talking about how emotional men and women are, I would say men are pretty fucking emotional. If they're going around raping and killing people all the time, and men are known stereotypically to be more violent and more angry, and like that, no, you don't see a girl punching a wall. I would say if I saw a girl like talking about her feelings and a guy punching a wall, I would go, whoa, he's freaking emotional today.
Right,
That's insane. So I think that that's like a really interesting stereotype or misconception about the idea of emotions. Like, why are positive emotions seen as emotional and negative emotions that are associated with masculinity are not seen as emotional? Because they should be. I mean, it's not okay to go and punch a wall or shout at someone, and that's what a lot of men do, more men than women. And I think the reason that I just am like so proud of girls, because
me
like
too.
I just love that women can sit together and analyze something in the most like intelligent way and really debunk their emotions and be so honest but also so calm. Like we will sit and we will talk about like we will have
and
like
you will give me advice,
debriefs,
but you will listen.
But we will listen to each other.
It's really beautiful. I remember being like, wow, this was amazing.
It's such a way to connect to people, but it's just so healthy. Yeah. And I do think that this is a conversation about how the patriarchy has disadvantaged men in a way. Right. Because there has been this lifelong understanding and stereotype that men need to be masculine and strong and they don't cry, that has been perpetuated through the generations by men to other men, to their sons, you know, about you don't cry, like suck it up, you play like a girl. Like those little microaggressions make a difference. And like I still know so many men today who like won't cry and stuff. And I think it's ridiculous. So I think that men haven't been allowed to be emotional. And that's not our fault. That's not women's fault. That's the fault of men who built this society. Built this system. But it is a problem, and they do need to be, that does need to be looked into, because suicide rates, like the most people who suicide are men. That's a problem. Men suffer a lot more mental health issues like depression. So it's obviously not working. This setup of men not being emotional is not working. Men are dying and men are depressed. So we need to look at that as well. But I don't think that it helps the fact that we are like put into this box of being like ridiculously emotional and It's like, it's crazy.
No, it is. Also, this just made me think of that book that I was reading about like anger in women and like how it's viewed so differently versus like even just as something as simple as like, oh, like if a man like vocalizes what he wants and is stern about it, we're like, oh, he's a boss, like we respect him. And if like a girl came in and like kind of came with that same attitude, like this is what I want, and then she's like, oh, well, she's like a little pushy, or like she's almost a bitch, or like who does she think she is? Or she's like crazy. I had like a clip where I was talking about like I love to like work and make money, because like I like to work and make money, and I posted that and my dad was like, you shouldn't like be posting things like this, you shouldn't like be talking about like making money. I'm like, yeah, okay, but if I was a man sitting here telling a camera like I love to work and make money,
go, oh, he's so driven.
So driven, so like, you know, work ethic on 100, but because I'm a girl it makes you uncomfortable that I'm talking about something, because it's almost like I'm in my masculine power talking about that I can support myself and I don't need somebody to do that for me, so that makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, that is so interesting. It is that like that uncomfortability with like a woman being stereotypically masculine in what she's saying, but it's crazy. It is. It's not cool.
Not cool. Hashtag not cool. Last thing to finish this off, you were reading that book, right? The one about the Me Too movement. What were like some main points that like really stuck with you from that book? Because I know you wrote a lot of notes you were telling me about.
Well, I started reading it. I was given it at Christmas.
Wait, what was the name of it again?
Men, Women, and the Whole Damn Thing.
Ooh, that's a good title.
So it was like this Australian journalist. He's like this, he's a really good guy, and he's a pretty amazing journalist, super left, like good guy. And I had this experience on Christmas with my dad, and it was very interesting for me, and it was kind of a pivotal moment for me, because I had been studying for like the last few months like gender studies, and I was just learning all of these insane things every day. A lot of it I already knew, because I think I realized that my friend group was so advanced.
Yeah.
And we had been talking about issues like this since we were in year 7. Mm-hmm. Like we would always sit, like there was 8 of us girls, and we'd always sit there and like at lunchtime and like analyze the way we were being treated by the boys.
I
like
love that so much.
Society and like things like that. And my friends are really smart. Mm-hmm. So they were very sophisticated discussions about this. And I have just always grown up understanding what the hell is going on with our society and what the hell is wrong with it. And, you know, as you get older, you understand it even more and have more realizations about it all. And then I started studying gender studies because as like an elective, because I was so into it and so passionate about it. And I just like learnt these crazy things that I was just like, I can't believe it. Like, for example, how the patriarchy has like influenced medical like data. Like if you look at a medical textbook that was like written like what, like 30 years ago even, it has this like ridiculously sexist
tone
description, undertone to everything, and it's nonsense. It is not scientifically proven at all. And like we were talking about how this whole understanding of like how procreation goes, like the egg is just sitting there waiting for the sperm, and the sperm comes up, does its thing, and then she can have a child. It's just not real.
Right, yeah.
That's not how it works. Like the egg does all these things, like sends out signals and like, like it is definitely more
not
equal.
just waiting for a man.
It's not just waiting for a man. And like, how does that even, you can see how sexism has poisoned even like medicine. And people read that and then think that that's fucking true because they read it in a medical textbook.
Right.
And it's so like, that's how huge this issue is, because there's so many layers to it. There's little microaggressions in society that we experience, like men like looking at us weird or like saying something, calling us out, and then there's like real life physical abuse or like, you know, all of these layers to it. And it's even in like medicine, it's even in a medical textbook. So I was just having these like crazy realizations, and like it was very interesting. And then at Christmas I was in a conversation with like my dad and then 2 family friends who are also men, and they were telling this story about how they went to a concert the other night, and this guy was like just staring at these women like really weirdly and just like scary staring, and wouldn't take his eyes off them. And then one of the girls turned around to him and was like, "Can you stop staring at us? This is really uncomfortable." And he just got really pissed off at that and just kept going. Like he actually would not leave there behind of them. And these 2 guys, like my family friends, it's like a father and son, they were like, "We need to get security, like this is weird." So they got him out of there, and they were like, yeah, it was like really disgusting, like this macho behavior that it's like really prevalent in like Australian culture, which I do think is a thing. And I was like, yeah, there's definitely something between the way like men behave in Australia that's like a little different. You know, everywhere it has a different version of like sexism and like masculinity. And I think that there is that kind of like boy, like rough kind of attitude in Australia with men. And I don't know why that like somehow like triggered my dad or something. Like he was just sick of me talking about gender studies. And he like kind of like put me down and was like, "Yeah, I don't want to hear about your gender anymore. Like, don't make this about gender." And I was like,
"But what is it about?"
But it is a conversation about masculine behavior, like male behavior in Australia. That is a conversation about gender. And he just, I've like talked about it since, and like he understands that was totally wrong to put someone down like that. But it made me feel like I was being in that position. I was the youngest there, and I was also a woman. And to be in front of 3 men who are all older than me talking about an issue where I am somewhat a victim of the patriarchy and of sexism, and speaking up about that and to be silenced like that was huge for me. And then my mum gifted me this book, and I started reading it, and the first page of the book was the author saying that he chose to write about this and chose to make this book because he had a conversation with his 21-year-old daughter. And she was talking to him, and he was talking about the Me Too movement when it was happening, and he was concerned about how this would affect male and female relationships, like how men would feel comfortable being around women because they're so freaking scared of being abused, and how women would be comfortable around men. And his 21-year-old daughter said to him, you need to shush, you need to shut up, and this is not the biggest concern. Like the fact that the whole Me Too movement is about all of these women who have been abused and pretty much silent about it since their abuse feel comfortable enough to come out and talk about it, and you're worried about how it's going to affect male and female relationships is just not the main issue right now. And he actually listened to her. And that was huge for me because I'm 21 and I had a conversation like this with my dad where he didn't really listen to me. So I got really into the book, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this to my dad and write all these notes in it. So I did, and I actually the author had referenced a lot of readings that I had read. So and he talked about the agriculture thing, and he says that patriarchy is from the birth of agriculture, and I was felt so validated. But I liked the book because he spoke about his understanding of sexism from the perspective of someone who knows that he is really privileged. He is a straight white male. He is the top of the food chain. He is so privileged, and he recognized that, which I thought was very important. Because I'm not going to read a book from a straight white male if he's not going to acknowledge that. But it was totally from that perspective. And
I want to read it.
It's really good. And he talks about it's basically he's just done a bunch of research to educate himself more, because he understood that if his daughter was saying to him, you don't get what's going on and I don't know why, then you need to do more research. You need to figure that out. And he took it upon himself to do that. And he researched so many sexual assault cases and talked to different people. And it's a series of he talked to older women who had a little bit of internalized misogyny, in my opinion, and who didn't really, weren't in line with modern day feminism or fourth wave feminism. Or people who didn't really understand how non-binary individuals or trans individuals are so affected by this whole issue. And it's just a collection of his research and his understanding and how he's changed his perspective and reflected on his own behavior in the past and what he can do from here on.
I think that's what it takes, though. It's just the willingness to kind of go inward and be okay, what is going on here? Instead of being no, I don't understand what's going on here because I don't experience it.
Totally. And I think he said that at the start, and I remember underlining. So he said it a few times of the thing that stops men being able to understand is their own ignorance. Actually, all you need to do is just sit with yourself and leave the ego aside and open up and have some empathy and think about how am I really a feminist? Am I really doing everything I can to support women to really understand what's going on and how hard it is to be female? Plus, how hard it is to be a woman of colour or trans woman of colour. I mean, there's layers to it.
Totally.
Even I am so much more privileged at being a white woman, you know? And if I can acknowledge that and I can really understand that, a man should be able to do that. Totally. He needs to understand how privileged he is and what he can do to support women and not feed into it. Because it's even if you haven't gone out and raped a woman, it doesn't mean that you are free of sexism. You are not misogynistic. Even when you see little things when men come into a house and they're we'll all go outside and hang out with themselves, that's not necessarily a negative thing, but you can just see how we are so gendered. There is such a gender diversity. There's such a difference between the way that men and women behave, and I don't know, it is just ignorance and lack of empathy that stops men looking inwards, and this inability to be emotional, because that is a stigma that they have. They're not able to be emotional and self-reflect. They don't know how. But that is what it's all about.
Well, this was an amazing episode. I think you are my favorite guest. You are just so educated, and I love the way you speak. I could listen to you all day.
Oh my God, I don't want it to end. I want to keep going.
We can keep going.
No,
but that was really good. I feel like we got it.
Okay, good.
Okay, guys. Thank you, Anya.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.